We are. We just did it better, longer. Guys believe it, and we're not going to change anything up. That would be silly on my part to panic. I mean, you don't do that. We're very comfortable about who we are, and we can beat anybody, anywhere, at any time, playing the way we play.
So we had that mindset tonight after the loss to be the aggressor, and we have to keep that same mentality in Game 3 and Game 4. Like, no matter where we are, if we have that mindset, we're in good hands.
They were desperate tonight, and they played like it, and we didn't. And the results showed.
Look, yesterday we heard Rockets coach Mike D'Antoni say, this is the way we played. We're not going to get away from it. It's what drew us here. It's what got us here. It's what gave us the #1 seed. And give him credit for going out and basically playing the same way. And now we've got ourselves a series. How are the Rockets, CC, able to turn things around in Game 2?
Yeah, I'll give the coach credit because I think that there was only two things that he could do. When he made those statements as far as, yes, we're an ISO team, but knowing that he isolated, especially James Harden, more so in the first game than any other series, seeing what he did in game #2 with, yeah, they did isolation again, but they did it off the fast break. They did also isolation instead of a pick and roll, having Capella at the top of the key or extended out onto the court. No, they had him either in the corner or at the wing, which he didn't get in the way offensively as much. So, yes, this is the only style he can coach.
Yep.
So the coach is being right. Yeah, I mean, you look back any years, go back to Phoenix, go back to any years he coached, this is what he's going to do. Now, this is the best personnel that he's ever had, and that's the reason why they won 65 games. But the things that you won't see is that when they went out and got P.J. Tucker, when they went out and got Chris Paul, yeah, we need spot-up shooters. We need other people to handle the ball, be more athletic. But we need guys who are tough and who can play some defense. And that's what you were able to see in this game. I'm not going to go as far as Steve Kerr and say they were desperate. But what they did was they played defense, and they played with the type of energy that a championship team needs to play with. They recognized that from game #1. So, yes, they got up and down the court. But Clint Capella getting out on the – when you see him isolated on Kevin Durant, it's an inspiration to his teammates being out there. You got Kevin Durant, one of the best ball handlers, who lit him up in game #1.
Great sequence.
Was on fire in game #2. He gets switched on Kevin Durant. And when you can slow down one of the best offensive players in the world, it sends a message to the rest of the teammates. This is the type of effort that we need. And you could see it went from the coach and the style that they're going to play into their leaders, Capella, Chris Paul, and the rest of them. And you could see it on the court.
Listen, what you saw last night, that was Rockets basketball. What you saw in Game 1 was a bad version of Rockets basketball. Last night, their defensive rating, identical to what it was for the season. Their assist rate, nearly identical. Their turnover percentage, identical. Their fast break points, identical. The only thing that was different about last night compared to who they were throughout the regular season is they were slightly better shooting, which is why they scored 127 as opposed to their regular season average, which was close to 117. That's the only difference, right? That is Rockets basketball. I talked about how they led the league in isolation plays in Game 1. I mean, in the regular season. In Game 1, they had the most isolation plays any team has had in 5 years. In Game 2, they had more, but it looked differently. Why? Because, see, you brought up a stat that the broadcast showed that was remarkable, that James Harden in Game 1 had more dribbles than who?
All three of the Warriors. Like, it was amazing. Clay, Steph, and KD.
Those three players had 549 dribbles in Game 1. James Harden had 550. So it wasn't that they didn't isolate in Game 2. They isolated at the exact same rate as Game 1.
Yes.
It was quicker isolations. It wasn't dribble, dribble, dribble for 17 seconds. There were no shot clock violations the entire game. And it was isolations to drive and kick, to get guys open.
Yeah, they didn't make up their mind on isolation that they had to get to the hole. Sometime if they could get to the hole and finish, they did, which got the Warriors in foul trouble. But most of the time, they drove in, got 2 feet in the lane, Nick. We talked about this, kicked out to an open shooter or the hockey assist where that guy dished the ball to someone else for a better shot.
And I want to say one thing quickly about the defense that I will give the Rockets credit for because it took courage. Kevin Durant is locked in. Right? Mm-hmm. Kevin Durant, 38 points to finish the last series, 37 and 38 in this series. And they decided we are not going to do what I said they should do, consistently double him. They said if KD is going to get 40, he's going to get 40. What we're not going to allow is him to get 30, but then Klay to get 25, Steph to get 30. And so while Kevin Durant has 75 points in these first 2 playoff games, he also has 1 assist in these first 2 playoff games. So they are not letting Kevin Durant create offense for other people, let Steph see shots go in, let Klay see shots go in. And I agree with Steve Kerr. I thought it was odd Steve Kerr said it, but this was a desperate Rockets team. You can't go down 0-2 at home. It's odd to hear the other coach say the team was desperate after just 1 game, but he's right. You can't go down 0-2 at home. It's the most important game the Rockets have played as a franchise, I don't know, in 20 years, you could argue, and they came out and did exactly what they needed to do.
You're right. Kevin Durant is completely locked in and seemingly unstoppable. But Steph Curry came out again and struggled last night. How much of what Steph Curry is doing right now is because Houston is limiting him? How much of it is because he's getting frustrated? Or do you think he's just not 100%?
No, this is playoff basketball. Steph's 100%. He's on the court. All right, you're on the court. You're accountable. No one's going to give you some type of built-in excuse.
Thank you.
You have signed up for what you're getting ready to get. It's the end of a long, long season. No one's 100%, but it's good defense by Houston, but it's also this team knows Steph. They're familiar with Steph, and Steph is a little limited. He's going against the best backcourt in the NBA in Chris Paul, and not necessarily Steph, but Klay. Klay not getting off. That prevents Steph from being able to be a volume shooter. And a stat that was given to me was really important was Chris Paul, when he is guarding Klay. I know you asked me about Steph, but Klay not being able to get off against Chris Paul has been big as far as the Rockets defense. He's shooting 25% field goal percent, 16% from 3-point range when Chris Paul is on him. So you talk about the effect on the backcourt of the Golden State Warriors. A lot of it has to do with the Houston Rockets and Chris Paul.
And part of what's going on with Steph, I keep harping on this point, not just because of foul trouble, but because of fatigue. The Rockets are hunting him down on the defensive end. They are making him work. And when you have to work defensively, when the way you get your offense, if you're Steph Curry, typically is running off that many screens, when it's playoff basketball, so it's a little more physical, and you're slight of frame, it's exhausting. The reason I'm really glad, see, that you're not going to buy into what the broadcast was, which is always not 100%, is he injured, is if you watch the game, he's getting to the basket like vintage Steph Curry. His shots aren't falling.
Yeah, but he's going against the best team in the NBA.
Right, exactly.
Proven over 82 games a schedule.
No, exactly right. Like Steph, we have seen, Steph is one of the most dynamic offensive talents I've ever seen in NBA history. But we have seen time and again in different playoff series where the teams go at him defensively, where they beat him up on the offensive end, that he's going to have some stretches where he just isn't that effective offensively.
And most teams, they put Steph on a guy where Steph can rest. You don't have that luxury when you go against the Rockets because everyone on the court is a threat to be able to score, be able to shoot, and to be able to dribble it from anywhere on the court.
It's a key point. You can't hide him defensively, which is against most teams in the NBA, you can do that. It's a great point.
127-105 was your final. Houston right back in this series.